WeTV just dropped their new series, Crime Stories, and in the first episode, it featured Lindsey and Garrett. And I'm going to do a separate video with Garrett, but in this specific video, we're going to talk about Lindsey, and I have some bonus tea to add to everything. So Lindsey claims that she grew up as a country girl. Her parents weren't very involved in her life growing up. She was raised by her step-grandmother, and that's who she looks at as her mother figure. And I need to go back and rewatch Scott and Lindsey's original season because I don't remember her really going much into detail on why her parents were absent in her life. Was it because of drugs? Could they not afford to be in her life? Did they have mental health issues? She didn't really go into detail about all that. Lindsey lived your typical all-American country girl life. She spent the week going to school, and then she would play basketball, and she was on the team and really good at it. And then she spent her weekends in the country on four-wheelers, and she ended up getting knocked up when she was only 16 years old. And it's kind of crazy to think that she got pregnant so young because Miley Grace, I'm pretty sure she's 16 years old right now. And it's kind of hard to imagine her having a child right now, but her mother had a child at her age. Lindsey said she was working 3 jobs. They must have been part-time jobs to be able to find that much time in the day to work 3 jobs and go to school full-time. And she had so much going on, she was getting overwhelmed. And somebody that she went to school with was like, hey, you know, you can just try some crystal meth and that'll help you stay up so you can study and have all the energy you need. And that's exactly how I was introduced to Adderall when I was in high school. Somebody was like, oh, this will help you stay up, it'll help you study, you'll get good grades. Luckily, I didn't end up liking Adderall that much, but Lindsey tried meth and she went full balls to the wall after that. She wanted to have it every single day. She wanted to figure out what she needed to do to get as much as possible and find the purest dope in the Mississippi. Lindsey wanted to have this appearance that she had this picture perfect family, so she went and bought a big fancy house. And I'm really confused how she was able to get that house, because if you're working as a drug dealer, because when she claimed she got that house, she said that she was just working strictly as a drug dealer at that time. How are you able to prove like your income? Like, I know when I tried to get a house, I had to show 2 years of a W-2 and show that I was still actively employed with that job. But somehow Lindsey was able to get a nice big fancy house. Maybe she had someone else put their name on the house for her so she could get approved, or had somebody else co-sign for her. But she was trying to sell all this dope and be this big queen pin in Mississippi, so she decided to hire 2 full-time babysitters that were with Miley Grace around the clock, and she would disappear for months at a time and allegedly wouldn't pay these babysitters any money, but the babysitters refused to leave because they didn't want to leave Miley Grace by herself. And they were scared of Lindsey because they had seen Lindsey do some things right in front of their very own eyes. And we're going to get more into that here in a moment. I thought for sure, like, I saw multiple other people assuming that Lindsey probably just found a few girls that she sold dope to and was probably like, okay, I'll hook you guys each up with $1 a day to watch my kid. But according to Miley Grace's father, he claims that the women Lindsey actually hired were exceptional. It's just sad because Lindsey really wasn't being a parent back then. She wasn't giving herself a chance to really bond with her daughter. Instead, her daughter is bonding with these 2 random women who are her nannies and probably thinking those women were her mother at the time. And Miley's dad was with Lindsey until Miley was 4. And Lindsey claims they broke up because they were just 2 completely different people and they wanted different things out of the relationship. But according to the ex, there's a lot more that went into them breaking up. Let's go ahead and look into what he had to say about Lindsey. This is his letter that he wrote to the judge when Lindsey went to prison. He said, "Dear Judge, my name is," and they redacted the name for privacy. "I'm the father of Miley Downs, and I have known Lindsey Downs since she was 15 years old. We had a relationship for 6 years. I'm requesting that you show Lindsey little to no leniency for sentencing today. It would take a significant amount of time to explain to you in detail every reason why she should be punished to the fullest extent, but I'll share with you a few the best I can. Since Miley was 3 years old, Lindsey has been wild and living some life that she finds exciting, I guess. It sounds like, from what he's saying here, that he really wasn't into partying and he did not approve of Lindsey getting into all these things. And he said that Lindsey and him were engaged while she attended the Ole Miss, which is a college, and within a year he found out Lindsey had multiple sugar daddies that she had kept secret. I found out about her other men and she ran off completely, abandoning Miley. I quit my job and drew unemployment for 6 months to raise Miley because I had no help with her, and I'm a diesel mechanic who works a lot of hours, so I couldn't do both. She got into drugs and she started getting into trouble after that, maybe about a year later. She took Miley and ran to Tupelo in August of 2015. Miley missed her first day of school because Lindsey was coming down from meth and passed out asleep. Lindsey would not allow Miley to hardly even come to Walnut to see any of our family. She isolated her and hired 2 random girls off of the internet to come keep Miley and be her nanny. Thankfully, the 2 girls she chose ended up being exceptional women. My daughter may not be alive today if it weren't for them. They stayed when Lindsey left for months and didn't pay them because Miley had no one and Lindsey was very aggressive, so everyone was scared to do anything. I would stay in Tupelo as much as I was allowed by Lindsey and try to make sure Miley was okay, but if anything didn't go her way, she made me leave. On one occasion, me and a nanny had just gotten Miley to sleep upstairs, and Lindsey come in with a man and a woman. Later come another man, and Lindsey came to us and said, "Hey, stay in here, I'm making the other guy leave." All of a sudden, he beat the man with brass knuckles and a crowbar, and he went running out the door. There was blood everywhere. Lindsey told me and the nanny to clean the blood up. You cannot pay me enough to make me accomplice in your crime. But the nanny was willing to go with the flow. They cleaned the blood up. They shut the garage door. And they ended up watching Lindsey and her friends leave. And Miley and another child were upstairs asleep during this whole altercation. Once Lindsey got put in jail, I took Miley and brought her to Walnut and didn't look back. I served Lindsey with custody papers when she was getting sentenced the first time, and she illegally forged my signature to custody papers with Brenda. She took my rights away, and I'll never be able to afford to be able to fight them. Then he said she had an affair during our engagement and burnt my house down so I would have to move. I found a journal with her admission to that. I had multiple people show me texts where she was asking to pay them to jump me. She shot up more than 1 vehicle of mine. She stole 2 of my cars and totaled them. She took off with a rental car I got for her and totaled it. So she was a very expensive girlfriend. And he said Lindsey called after first being sentenced before, and she was so proud of herself. She told me and my wife, "I'm famous." She has Brenda print off news articles and send her in the mail so she could hang them in her cell. She was so proud, and I know at that moment 100% it was more than a drug problem. She has shown severe aggression in front of Miley. Miley has watched Lindsey shoot someone on more than 1 occasion. She's been tormented at school due to Lindsey exposing herself and her drug-consumed lifestyle on national television, and she has no remorse. And this came out back when she was with Scott. And he said, well, this was after she had broke up with Scott. Lindsey's dangerous, selfish person and does not care how her actions affect her daughter or anyone around. Lindsey needs attention and will get it at any cost, and my daughter can't have peace and no one else while Lindsey's out in the streets. I'm not trying to use this against Lindsey because obviously she's done a complete 180 when it comes to her relationship with Miley. I just feel like that provided more insight into how she was back when she was ripping and running in the streets. And according to Lindsey, she claims that she watched way too much Breaking Bad and she thought she could whip up the finest dope in the Mississippi. She wasn't trying to do no average shake and bake method. She was trying to get in the kitchen and thought she could really mix all the chemicals. She thought that she could use a medication that had meth in it to make meth, which I'm assuming she tried to use like Adderall or Ritalin. And she was trying to mix it all up and she really thought she knew what she was doing. And next thing you know, a big fire just burst out in this trailer that she was cooking in. And instead of trying to put the fire out, she said, "Oh, this is too much to deal with." And she went after her car and drove off. I can't believe she's admitting to that on national TV. That, on top of her selling drugs to all these people, just shows her complete lack of regard for other people's safety while she was out using, and she really didn't care who was affected by that potential fire and just dipped out. And I'm sure somebody's watching this show now and they're probably looking back and saying, "Oh, that's how that fire was started." Hopefully nobody was hurt. She's honestly really lucky that she made it out of there alive after starting a fire from cooking dope, because it has ended so tragically for so many other people. And whose trailer was she filming in while she was doing all this? Because she claimed that wasn't the trailer she cooked in. So did they just go find a random trailer in the trailer park to use for B-roll footage? Or was that her friend's trailer? I was so confused. Then Lindsey said that she was using and she really got into selling big time a year after she started using, and she went to jail 1 year into selling dope after she decided to go pick up her dad and stepmom. And after she picked them up, she ended up getting pulled over, and the police asked if they could search her vehicle, and she said no. And she thought as long as she said no, she was covered. But they ended up searching the vehicle anyways, and they found a 1/2 gram of dope. And then she eventually later on got caught and busted for aggravated assault, multiple possession charges, paraphernalia charges, and the charges just kept coming in the longer she was on drugs. It seemed like this girl couldn't go longer than a few months staying out of trouble for longer than 24 hours, because she would get arrested, they'd hold her for a day, then they'd either release her or she would bond out. And she claimed she spent over $50,000 bonding other people out, so I'm sure she had no issue getting bonded out when she needed it out. I've seen this happen time and time again with so many criminals, especially people on the show too. They get away with so many things. They just get a slap on the wrist and they don't take the consequences seriously. And the next thing you know, they get in trouble again and again and again. And then once everything finally catches up to them, they really lay it to them. What I don't understand is, why did Lindsey continue to live in such a small town? Because when you're in a small town, everybody knows everybody. And it doesn't take long for the police to find out who you are if you're living a life of crime. And the police even admitted they quickly knew who Lindsey was and how she was getting in trouble in all these neighboring counties. And she was known as a female drug trafficker. If that was her, I'd be wanting to move all the time, or like go to a big city where people aren't watching me, because you know all the local police officers knew who she was, knew where she lived, knew what her cars looked like, knew who she hung out with, and where all her friends lived. When you live in a small town doing things like that, it's only a matter of time before the walls close in on you. Lindsey literally said her graduating class only had like 30 people. That is a small ass town. And Lindsey just wasn't being very smart when it came to how she was moving, especially as someone who is riding dirty. She was being completely reckless, in my opinion. She was selling a pound to everyone, or some person was buying a pound from her every single week. And this person, once it was time for them to re-up, they got pretty antsy and impatient. They would blow up Lindsey, and they're ready to get their pound as soon as possible. So they're blowing Lindsey up, and Lindsey pulled out of where she was staying at the time, and she pulls out and she starts speeding, going 65 in a 40. Like, at that point, you're just asking to get caught up. But like she said, she got too cocky, and the police started pursuing her. And of course, she put the pedal to the metal, and she went from going 65 miles an hour to over 130 miles per hour. She said that she got too cocky, and she really believed that she could get away with driving with all this illegal stuff on her because she had a lawyer. And she sat down with her lawyer, and she's like, hypothetically, what advice would you give to a drug dealer on how to stay out of trouble and not get caught up? And this lawyer told her that she needed to keep a safe on her, and the cops wouldn't be able to get into the safe unless they got a warrant. And she said that worked for her for a while, but this time she had a really bad feeling in her stomach, and she felt like this was going to be the time that they were going to get a warrant to the safe. So she wanted to speed away and get as far away as possible so she can get ahead of the cops and ditch the safe and get as far away from the safe and drugs as possible so she could minimize the chances of them linking that safe to her. But of course, they ended up eventually finding it. I don't get how she was driving that fast on the country roads like that. Like, country roads are so hard to drive on, in my opinion. Like, I'm a city girl. I'm used to driving in the city. And every time I go to the country, like, my sister lives in the country, and you have to, like, drive down, like, 30 minutes of back roads to even get to her house. And every time I go there, I am so freaking stressed out with how small the roads are, dealing with gravel roads and how windy they are, and when someone gets behind you on the roads and you feel like you're not going fast enough, but you don't want to go too fast because you don't want to end up in a ditch. Like, I just get way too stressed out dealing with that. And that's when I'm going the speed limit. Like, I stressed out going 50 miles per hour on a country road. I couldn't imagine going 130 miles per hour. And eventually, Lindsey went around a corner too fast, and she ended up in an embankment. And when she went to the embankment, it ended up slamming her head into the passenger side of the, what's that called? Like, the front part of your car. You know what I'm talking about. The dashboard. She ended up hitting her head on the passenger dashboard, and that knocked her out for a few minutes, and that gave enough time for the police to catch up with her, and she woke up to the police dragging her out by her shorts. She was arrested. She went to jail. She served, I think, a year or two in prison. I can't remember exactly. Don't quote me on that. But then she eventually got out, and she was arrested again in 2020 when she was caught with drugs once again. And she also got caught with a stolen firearm, and she got busted trying to bring drugs into the jail. And due to those charges, she's looking at 40 years. Now that I'm sitting down and really thinking about it, I think she served 4 years in prison before she was on the show. And then when she was on the show with Scott and went back to prison, she served 8 months. And she's looking at up to 40 years off these charges she has now. I don't know. I feel like she's not going to get the full 40 years. I feel like she's done a lot to change her life around and prove to the judge that she's really trying to be a different person. But I don't know, like, even then, you still have to face the consequences of your actions. And with her being a career criminal, I really don't know if she's going to be able to get out of it. But I kind of feel like she might. I feel like if anything, he might just give her, like, long-term probation or something like that. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that she's going to get a prison sentence off these charges from 2020? Here's my final thoughts on this situation. I am so glad Lindsey has turned her life around, and she seems to be doing better. She has custody of her daughter. She's got her own place. She just got her bachelor's degree. She's trying to get another degree. I'm not sure what she's trying to get another degree in, but she's still going to school even after getting her bachelor's degree. And it seems like she's trying to be a productive member of society. But the one thing I did notice, like when I watched Garrett, you could tell he was genuinely remorseful about his crimes. There's multiple times he broke down in tears. And I'm not saying that you gotta break down in tears to show you're remorseful, but it kind of just seemed like Lindsey was just gloating about all her crimes and almost glamorizing that lifestyle, and almost kind of felt like she was bragging instead of telling about her story. I will say though, I thought she was going to lay it on a lot more thicker than she did and try to amp up that she was this big Mississippi queen pin. And even at times it did seem like she was trying to do that. It felt like she wasn't trying to go overboard with it like I was expecting she would do. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about Lindsey in this first episode of Crime Stories in the comments below. I will be talking about Garrett in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.